I never thought that waking up this morning and putting on this wrinkled white shirt would become the biggest decision of my life. Running late for the interview, sweat dripping down my back, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. My mind kept repeating the same desperate prayer. Please, let this one work out. The receptionist barely glanced at my resume before directing me straight to the 45th floor, where only VIPs apparently went. It felt strange, but I assumed maybe the HR department was located there. When the elevator doors slid open, I stepped into what looked nothing like a corporate office. The hall stretched before me like something out of a luxury wedding venue. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Red carpet lined the floor, and the air was thick with something I recognized instantly. Alpha pheromones. My omega instincts flared immediately, a warning bell clanging in my head. This wasn't a job interview floor. This looked like some kind of mating ceremony. You're late. A stern voice came from behind me. I turned around and my breath caught in my throat. The man standing there was tall, easily over 6 feet, with a sharp jawline that could cut glass and steel gray eyes that seemed to look straight through me. His presence was so dominating that my throat went dry instantly. This was Clark Pierce, the CEO, the billionaire everyone whispered about. The man so ruthless that people held their breath during his meetings. Sir, I'm actually here for the interview. Yes, the selection round. You're the last candidate, Clark said without even glancing at any file. He hadn't even confirmed my name. Confusion washed over me. Selection round? I had applied for a job, hadn't I? Then I noticed the other people in the hall. They weren't typical job candidates. They were all omegas, dressed in expensive clothes, looking nervous and primped, all staring at Clark like he was some kind of prize to be won. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a job interview. This was a husband selection. And somehow I had accidentally applied for it. My heart sank to my stomach. This wasn't the job I had been desperately searching for. This was an arranged mating, some high society performance that people like me didn't belong in. I was just a middle-class omega trying to pay rent and survive in this expensive city. But now Clark's eyes were fixed on me, studying me like I had pressed the wrong button and ended up somewhere I definitely shouldn't be. So what's your name? He asked, his tone softening just slightly. M. Miller. Miller Hayes. Miller, Clark repeated, and the way he said my name made it sound different, intimate somehow, possessive even, like he was tasting it on his tongue. Every instinct told me to run, to get out of there before this misunderstanding went any further. But before I could move, Clark's hand reached out and gently wrapped around my wrist. The touch sent an electric current racing through my body. I tried to control my breathing, tried to stop my omega biology from reacting to his proximity. Where are you going? The selection just started, Clark said, and there was such authority in his voice that ignoring it felt impossible. I looked up into his eyes. He was serious, but there was something else there too. Curiosity, maybe. Like he was trying to figure out why I was here, why I seemed so different from everyone else in this room. His scent grew stronger, wrapping around me like smoke. Cedar and something darker, something that made my knees weak even though I desperately wanted to stay strong. The other omegas were watching us now. I could feel their stares burning into my back, could sense their jealousy and confusion. Why was the CEO personally touching this nobody who showed up looking like he just rolled out of bed? I didn't belong here. I didn't have designer clothes or a wealthy family backing me. I had student loans and a part-time delivery job. Sir, I think there's been a mistake. I tried again, my voice steadier this time. I applied for an executive position, not this. Clark's lips curved into a small smile, but it wasn't mocking. It was knowing, like he could see right through my panic to something underneath. Miller Hayes, 23 years old, business administration degree, currently working part-time deliveries and taking night classes, living alone in a studio apartment in the East District, using cheap brand scent blockers. I froze. How did he know all of that? My file must have been incredibly detailed, or he had actually taken the time to research me. Either option was terrifying. You did apply for the executive partnership program, he continued, releasing my wrist but staying close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. That's what this is, partnership. The word suddenly made horrible sense. I thought back to the online application I had filled out in desperation last week. How the job description had seemed vague but promising. I never imagined partnership meant mating contract. I don't want this, I said quietly, aware that others might hear. Embarrassment burned through me, but fear was stronger. Fear of being trapped, of losing control of my own life. Then why are you so nervous? Clark asked, and there was a hint of teasing in his voice now. He leaned in slightly, not touching me but close enough that his scent intensified. Testing me. My Omega side was screaming at me to submit, to stop fighting. But I wasn't raised to just give in. Because this is insane. I came here thinking I might finally get a stable job. And instead I'm standing in what looks like a reality TV show for rich people. Clark actually laughed at that. A real laugh. Not a polite business chuckle. Some of the other candidates turned to look, shocked at the sound. Apparently he didn't laugh often. You're honest. I like that, he said, his gray eyes still locked on mine. Most people tell me what they think I want to hear. You just tell the truth. The truth is I need to leave, I said, trying to step back, but the crowd of candidates had formed a loose circle around us. Just hear me out, Clark said, and his voice dropped lower. Meant only for me. Stay for the selection. If you win, I'll give you any job position you want in my company. If you don't win, you still get a guaranteed junior position. Either way, you walk out of here employed. My brain struggled to process this. Was he serious? But looking at his face, I could tell he was. This was a genuine offer, not a cruel joke. And if I agree to stay, then the marriage would only happen if you want it to. Clark interrupted smoothly. I don't force anyone, Miller. But I do think you're more interesting than anyone else in this room. So what do you say? Take a chance? I looked around at the other candidates, at this ridiculous situation, at the CEO, who for some reason seemed determined to keep me here. I thought about my overdue rent, my student loans, the rejection emails piling up in my inbox. Fine, I finally said. But don't expect anything more than participation. Clark smiled, genuinely this time. That's all I'm asking for right now. Somehow I had a feeling I just made a decision that would change everything. I was still processing the shock when Clark led me deeper into the hall. The other Omegas stared as we passed, and I could practically feel their jealousy radiating off them in waves. Why was the CEO personally escorting this obvious outsider? Why had he touched me so casually when he had barely acknowledged them? I didn't belong here and everyone knew it, yet somehow I was getting attention I never asked for. Sir, listen, I really did come here for a job, I said once we reached a quieter corner away from the crowd. I needed him to understand this wasn't some scheme, but Clark just smiled, that knowing expression that suggested he saw through everything. He pulled out a tablet from his coat pocket and held it toward me. Miller, I've seen your application. You applied for the Executive Partnership Program. This is it. I looked at the screen. There was my application, and right there in bold letters, Executive Partnership Program. My stomach dropped. How had I missed that? But then I saw the fine print below, the description I had skimmed through in my desperation to submit before the deadline. Words like long-term commitment and comprehensive compatibility assessment should have been red flags. I had been so focused on the salary range that I completely missed what this actually was. I don't want this, I said slowly, aware that some candidates were still watching from a distance. Shame heated my face, but stronger than that was the fear. Fear of being forced something I couldn't control. Clark tucked the tablet away and moved slightly closer, though he maintained a respectful distance. Then why are you still standing here shaking? He was right. My hands were trembling, but it wasn't from excitement, it was from the way my Omega biology was reacting to his presence. His alpha scent grew stronger, like cedar wood and something darker, earthier. It felt like he was testing me, seeing how I would respond. My body wanted to react, wanted to lean into that scent, but I forced myself to step back. He moved forward, maintaining that perfect distance that kept me on edge without actually crowding me. His presence alone was overwhelming enough. Look, I'm not one of these wealthy Omegas who want this lifestyle. I tried to explain, gesturing vaguely at the hall. I'm normal. I just need a stable job so I can pay my bills and maybe save enough to finish my degree properly. Normal? Clark cut me off, and this time his voice held something softer. Miller, your resume says you work part-time deliveries, attend night classes, and use the cheapest scent blockers on the market. I know all of this. And honestly, that's more attractive to me than any of those designer omegas who only see dollar signs. I felt like I had been hit. How easily he had read my entire situation. How clearly he had looked past the surface. Had he really studied my background that carefully? He had released my wrist earlier, but now he was close enough that I could feel the warmth coming off his body. He leaned toward my ear and whispered, "Let me propose a deal. Stay in this selection. If you win, I'll give you any job you want in my entire company. If you don't win, you still get a guaranteed junior management position. No matter what happens, you leave here employed." My mind went blank. What kind of deal was this? But before I could respond, he added, "And there's no pressure. You can leave any time. I just think you deserve a fair chance at something better. And if I agree to participate, then the marriage part." "Marriage only happens if you're ready for it," Clark said, looking directly into my eyes. "I don't force people into commitments, Miller. I'm just asking if you're willing to try, to see where this goes." Practically speaking, I had no other options. My rent was 2 months overdue. Student loans were crushing me. And this alpha, despite his wealth and power, wasn't being arrogant about his offer. He was being certain, confident in a way that didn't feel like manipulation. I took a deep breath. "All right, fine, but don't expect anything beyond basic participation. I'm only doing this for the opportunity." Clark's smile transformed his entire face. Genuine warmth, replacing the CEO mask. "Perfect. That's all I need to hear." He reached out and lightly touched my shoulder, a reassuring gesture that sent another jolt through my system. "Come on, let me explain the rest of the process." As we walked back toward the main hall, I noticed how every Omega's expression had changed. Before, they looked at me with confusion. Now they saw me as a threat. And Clark? He was behaving so comfortably around me, like the decision had already been made. Like this was just a formality. A woman in an expensive burgundy dress approached us, her smile sharp. "Mr. Pierce, are we starting soon? Some of us have been waiting for quite a while." "Yes. We'll begin shortly," Clark replied professionally. But his hand remained on my shoulder. The gesture wasn't lost on anyone. Another Omega, this one with perfectly styled blonde hair, looked me up and down with barely concealed disdain. I was wearing a wrinkled shirt and cheap pants while everyone else looked like they had stepped out of a fashion magazine. But Clark's attention stayed fixed on me, and that seemed to matter more than any designer label. "Everyone, please take your seats," an assistant announced, appearing from a side door. "The selection process will now officially begin." As people moved toward the arranged seating area, Clark leaned close to me one more time. "Just be yourself, Miller. That's what got my attention in the first place." I wanted to ask what he meant by that. How being a struggling nobody could possibly interest a billionaire CEO. But the moment passed as we were separated. Candidates on one side, Clark taking his position at the front of the room. Looking around at the competition, reality sank in. These people were polished, educated, connected. They knew how to navigate high society. Meanwhile, I was just trying to figure out how I had ended up here. But when I glanced up and caught Clark's eyes across the room, something passed between us. Recognition maybe, understanding. Like he saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. The assistant began explaining the selection rounds. Something about compatibility tests and evaluation periods. My heart hammered in my chest. I had agreed to this, but I still had no idea what I was actually doing. All I knew was that walking away now felt impossible. And not just because of the job offer. Something about the way Clark looked at me made me want to stay, made me curious about what might happen next, and that terrified me more than anything else. The selection rounds began, and nothing about this resembled a typical job interview. This was a survival game, except instead of being voted off, we were being evaluated on how well we matched with an alpha I barely knew. Yet, with each round, I noticed Clark learning something new about me, studying me like I was a puzzle he wanted to solve. The first round was announced. Scent compatibility test. My stomach dropped. They were going to put us in a room with Clark's concentrated pheromones and measure how long we could handle the exposure. Several Omegas went before me, entering a glass chamber one at a time. Most lasted only a few minutes before emerging looking overwhelmed, some with tears streaming down their faces. One Omega stumbled out after barely 3 minutes, gasping for air. I was scheduled to go last. Waiting made the anxiety worse. I watched as Sienna, the elegant Omega in the burgundy dress, lasted nearly 7 minutes. She emerged looking composed but flushed, clearly affected but maintaining her dignity. The bar had been set high. When my turn finally came, I stepped into the glass chamber. The door sealed behind me with a soft hiss. For a moment nothing happened. Then the ventilation system activated, and Clark's scent flooded the enclosed space. My entire body locked up. The scent was overwhelming, possessive and raw, but also strangely comforting in a way that made no logical sense. It felt dangerous and safe simultaneously, like standing at the edge of a cliff but knowing someone would catch you if you fell. Every Omega instinct I had tried to suppress suddenly surged to the surface, screaming at me to submit, to seek out the source of this scent, to give in completely. But I forced myself to stay still. I closed my eyes and focused on controlling my breathing, on staying grounded despite the biological storm raging through my system. The scent started feeling familiar somehow, like a memory I couldn't quite place. Not frightening, magnetic. A pull rather than a push. The timer beeped. When I opened my eyes, the assistant outside was staring at me with wide eyes. 8 minutes. I had lasted 8 minutes, longer than anyone else. But instead of feeling proud, I felt scared. Scared because my body had responded to his presence in ways I couldn't control. Scared because for those 8 minutes, I hadn't wanted to leave. As I exited the chamber, my legs felt weak. Clark was standing near the observation window, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw something flicker in his gaze. Satisfaction maybe, or recognition. Like I had just confirmed something he already suspected. The second round was a group interview. All remaining candidates, now down to just 5 of us, sat in a semicircle while Clark positioned himself in front. The question was simple but loaded. Why do you want to marry me? The first Omega gave a rehearsed answer about security and stability. Because you're powerful and I want a life where I don't have to worry about my future. The second focused on status. Because you're successful and my family believes we would be a good match. Our connections could benefit both our families. Every answer sounded scripted, practiced in front of mirrors. Clark's expression remained neutral, but I could see the boredom settling into his eyes. This wasn't what he wanted to hear, even if these were honest admissions. When my turn came, I sat in silence. What was I supposed to say? That I didn't want to marry him. That I was only here because he had offered me a job. Everyone waited, the silence stretching uncomfortable and long. Clark leaned forward in his chair, elbows on his knees, and looked directly at me. Miller, I decided honesty was all I had. I don't want to get married. I'm only here because you made me a deal. And if I'm being completely honest, I still don't understand why someone like you needs this whole circus. You could have anyone. Why go through all this? The room went dead silence. Someone gasped. Another Omega's mouth fell open in shock. I had basically insulted the entire process in front of everyone. Questioned the CEO's judgment, and admitted I didn't even want to be there. But Clark? He started laughing. A genuine surprised laugh that lit up his whole face. It was the first time I had seen him drop his CEO persona completely. He looked younger when he laughed. More human. Do you know why you're different from everyone else here, Miller? He said, addressing the entire room now. Because you're not just capable of handling me. You can handle yourself too. You have backbone. And that's incredibly rare. You don't have a script. You just speak your truth. I felt my face heat up. Was that a compliment or was he mocking me? But the way he looked at me suggested he was serious, that my honesty had somehow impressed him more than any polished answer could have. That evening, the results were announced. 2 names appeared on the screen as finalists, Miller Hayes and Sienna Westbrook. Just me and the sophisticated Omega who clearly belonged in this world. The one who knew which fork to use at fancy dinners and how to make small talk with investors. Meanwhile, I was the guy who ate instant noodles for dinner and thought dressing up meant wearing a clean shirt. Instead of relief or excitement, I felt trapped. I had officially become part of a world I never wanted to enter. When the other candidates left, congratulating Sienna and shooting me confused looks, I walked out of the hall, needing air. Miller, wait. Clark's voice came from behind me. I stopped but didn't turn around. You seem upset. I'm confused, I admitted, finally facing him. I don't know if I deserve to be here. This is all too much. too overwhelming. Clark nodded, understanding crossing his features. The finale starts tomorrow. But if you feel this isn't right for you, you can still walk away. I won't stop you, but he could stop me. Not physically, but emotionally. Because when he spoke with such genuine concern, when he looked at me without the CEO mask, something in my chest pulled tight. My heart wanted me to stay even as my brain screamed to run. What happens in the finale? I asked instead of leaving. You'll see tomorrow, Clark said softly. But Miller, whatever you decide, make sure it's what you actually want, not what you think you should want. As I walked away, his words echoed in my head. What did I want? I had come here for a job, for financial stability, for a way out of my struggling existence. But somewhere between the scent compatibility test and that group interview, something had shifted. I was starting to see Clark as more than just a CEO or an alpha. I was starting to see him as someone who might actually understand me. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. The finale task was announced, and it hit me like a punch to the gut. Spend one night at my penthouse separately. Each finalist gets their turn. Whoever makes me feel most comfortable and shows genuine connection wins. This felt incredibly unfair. Sienna had grown up attending charity balls and exclusive events. She knew how to navigate wealthy social circles, how to hold a wineglass properly, how to make sophisticated conversation. Meanwhile, I had never even been inside an alpha's home before, let alone someone like Clark's private penthouse. The closest I had come to luxury was delivering food to expensive apartments and wondering what life looked like on the other side of those doors. Sienna went first. I watched her leave the following evening, dressed in an elegant navy dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Her walk was confident, practiced. She looked like she belonged in Clark's world, polished, refined, perfect. When she returned the next morning, there was a satisfied smile on her face. She had clearly done well, and my chances felt like they were crumbling before my turn even started. Then came my evening. When I arrived at the penthouse address, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. The building itself was intimidating. All glass and steel, with a doorman who looked at me skeptically before checking his list and waving me through. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless, my reflection staring back at me from the mirrored walls. I looked terrified. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. Clark was already there, and the sight of him made my breath catch. He was wearing a black casual shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing strong forearms. Behind him, floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the entire city lit up like a constellation. He looked like something out of a film, except this time he seemed relaxed rather than formal. More human somehow. "Are you nervous?" he asked casually, walking over to pour water into a glass and offering it to me. "Extremely," I admitted, taking the glass with both hands to stop them from trembling. There was no point in lying. He gestured to the comfortable couch near the windows. "That's actually refreshing to hear, Miller." As I sat down, he took a seat across from me, maintaining a respectful distance. "Look, tonight isn't some elaborate test. I just want to know you, the real you, not the version you think I want to see." Dinner was surprisingly simple. When he asked what I wanted to eat, I had been honest. I told him I preferred simple food over fancy cuisine. He looked genuinely surprised but immediately called his chef with instructions for basic pasta. He even took off his watch and set it aside like he was shedding his CEO persona layer by layer. As we ate, conversation started flowing naturally. I found myself telling him things I rarely shared with anyone. How I lived alone because my family was in another state. How we had grown apart over the years due to distance and different life choices. I admitted that I had wanted to study architecture, had dreamed of designing buildings that would stand for generations, but the tuition was impossible. So I had settled for business administration at a cheaper school, convincing myself it was practical. Clark listened without interrupting. No judgment clouded his expression, no unwanted advice. He just listened, really listened, like my words mattered. Then, surprisingly, he shared his own story. His parents had built Pierce Industries from nothing and expected him to continue their legacy. But what he had really wanted was to be a photographer, to capture moments and emotions through a lens rather than manage spreadsheets and board meetings. "They told me photography was a hobby, not a career," he said quietly, staring into his wineglass. that I owed it to them to take over what they had built. So I did. And now I'm successful by everyone's standards, except my own. I feel alone in this massive world I never actually wanted. Is that why you organized this selection? I asked. Pieces clicking into place. Partially. My family was pressuring me to settle down, to find someone suitable, but I refused to fall into another arrangement that felt hollow. I thought if I created a structured process, at least I would have some control over finding someone real. He paused, then smiled, a genuine expression that made him look younger. But then you showed up and changed everything. What do you mean? I mean that after meeting you I realized I don't want just an arrangement anymore. I want an actual connection. Something authentic. My heart hammered against my ribs. Were these just carefully chosen words, or did he actually mean them? But when I looked into his eyes, I saw something that seemed genuine. Vulnerability that was hard to fake. The night grew later. We moved to the balcony, where the cool air carried the sounds of the city below. I shivered slightly, and without a word Clark draped his jacket over my shoulders. It smelled like him, that cedar scent that had become strangely familiar. You could win this, Miller, he said softly, but I want you to win it for yourself, not because you're trying to impress me or because you need the job. Whatever choice you make it because it's what you truly want. He stepped closer, not crowding me but near enough that I could feel his warmth cutting through the night chill. His scent wrapped around me, no longer overwhelming but comforting. There was no hug, no kiss, no dramatic gesture, just proximity, just presence. "Good night, Miller," he said quietly. As I lay in the guest room that night, staring at the ceiling, I realized something had shifted inside me. Maybe this situation wasn't as terrible as I had thought. Maybe there was something real developing here, something worth exploring. The thought both excited and terrified me in equal measure. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed of city lights and cedar scent, of laughter shared over simple pasta, of feeling less alone than I had in years. And for the first time since this whole strange journey began, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I had accidentally stumbled into something that could change my life in ways I had never imagined. The morning sun streaming through the windows woke me gently. For a few peaceful moments, I forgot where I was. Then reality crashed back. I was in Clark Pierce's penthouse, part of a selection process that would determine both our futures. But unlike the panic I expected to feel, there was something else present now. Hope, perhaps, or the beginning of something I wasn't quite ready to name. I got dressed slowly, trying to mentally prepare for leaving, for the announcement that would come soon, declaring a winner. Part of me wanted it to be me. Another part was terrified of what that would mean, of how drastically my life would change. But the largest part, the part I was trying hard to ignore, just wanted more nights like the one I had just experienced. More honest conversations, more shared laughter, more moments where the rest of the world fell away and it was just two people trying to understand each other. As I walked toward the living room to say goodbye, I had no idea that everything was about to fall apart. I was gathering my things the next morning, preparing to leave the penthouse, when I noticed the television in the living room had turned on automatically to a news channel. At first, I was going to ignore it, but then the headline caught my eye and froze me in place. Billionaire Alpha Clark Pierce's husband selection. Nothing but a PR stunt? My stomach dropped to the floor. I grabbed the remote and turned up the volume, unable to look away even though part of me desperately wanted to. The reporter's voice was crisp and professional. Sources close to Pierce Industries have confirmed that the company has been facing significant controversy among investors due to CEO Clark Pierce's aggressive business tactics and several recent hostile takeovers. The husband selection, which has captivated public attention over the past weeks, appears to be a carefully orchestrated public relations campaign designed to soften his image and stabilize dropping stock prices. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and searched for more information. Article after article appeared, each one more detailed than the last. They described how Clark's advisors had allegedly planned this entire event, how selecting an Omega husband would make him appear more stable and family-oriented, how every aspect was calculated to improve the company's public perception. There were quotes from anonymous sources, timelines showing the correlation between announced selection rounds and stock price fluctuations, analysis from business experts discussing the brilliance of using personal life as a corporate strategy. Betrayal cut through me like a knife. Had everything been fake? The vulnerability he had shown last night, the personal stories he had shared, the way he had looked at me like I actually mattered, was it all just performance? Had I been nothing more than a prop in his business strategy? I heard footsteps and looked up to see Clark entering from the kitchen, a coffee mug in his hand. The moment he saw the television screen, his expression changed. Guilt was written clearly across his face, and that was somehow worse than if he had looked surprised or confused. "Miller, let me explain," he started. "Is this true?" I thrust my phone toward him, the damning article displayed on the screen. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. He was silent for several seconds, and that silence confirmed everything. The mug seemed to grow heavy in his hand. "No." The word exploded out of me, louder than I had ever spoken to him. "You used me. This whole thing was just a game to you." I actually started thinking maybe something real was happening. But I was just a pawn in your corporate chess match. "Miller, please." Clark set down his mug and moved toward me. But I held up my hand in a sharp stop gesture. "Did you really think I would stay with you once I knew the truth? That I would be okay being your trophy to fix your reputation? I'm not some business transaction you can negotiate." "In the beginning, yes, this was planned," Clark admitted, and his honesty somehow hurt more than a lie would have. "My advisors suggested it. The company was struggling with public perception, and they thought a stable relationship would help. I agreed to it initially. I could feel tears burning behind my eyes, threatening to fall. My emotions were overwhelming: anger, hurt, humiliation, all crashing together." Clark stepped closer and gently placed his hands on my shoulders. I wanted to pull away but found myself frozen. His scent intensified, taking on an almost desperate quality. "But Miller, it's not a plan anymore. You matter to me now. Genuinely. Seriously matter. You have no idea what you've become to me." "What does that even mean?" My voice cracked, tears finally spilling over. His grip on my shoulders was gentle but firm. "It means that everything I told you last night was the truth. My photography dreams, feeling alone in this world, those were things I had never told anyone before. I told you because you're different. You're real in a way nobody else in my life is." "I don't know if I can trust you, Clark," I whispered, tears streaming down my face now. "How am I supposed to know what's real and what's part of the strategy?" "Then let me prove it. Give me a chance to show you." His voice was urgent now, almost pleading. "I'll cancel the selection right now. I'll hold a press conference today and publicly state this was never about PR. Whatever you need, I'll do it." But I couldn't hear him anymore. The betrayal was too raw, too fresh. I pulled away from his touch, needing physical distance to think clearly. I need time to think about this," I said, backing toward the elevator. "I can't do this right now." Clark didn't follow me. He didn't call out or try to stop me. He just stood there, and somehow that was the most painful part. Because if he had really cared, wouldn't he fight harder? Or was letting me go his way of showing respect for my choice? I couldn't tell anymore. My judgment felt completely compromised. When I reached the lobby, I could see through the glass doors that media representatives were already gathering outside the building. The news had gone viral. Reporters with cameras, people with phones recording, all waiting to catch a glimpse of the scandal unfolding. I felt exposed, humiliated, like my private pain was about to become public entertainment. I found a back exit and escaped into the morning streets. The city was waking up around me. People rushing to work, completely unaware that my entire world had just collapsed. I had come to this city looking for a job, for stability, for a chance at a better life. Instead, I had gotten tangled up in something far more complicated. Something that had made me hope for things I shouldn't have hoped for. My phone buzzed constantly. Messages from people I barely knew, former candidates from the selection, even old classmates I hadn't spoken to in years, all asking if I had seen the news. I turned it off and walked aimlessly through the streets, trying to process everything. The worst part wasn't even the public humiliation or the betrayal. The worst part was that despite everything, despite the lies and manipulation, part of me still wanted to believe Clark. Part of me still remembered the way he had laughed at my honesty, the genuine warmth in his eyes when he had shared his own stories, the comfortable silence we had shared on the balcony. That part of me whispered that maybe his feelings had been real, even if the circumstances that brought us together weren't. But I couldn't trust that voice. Not now. Not when everything felt like it was built on lies. So I kept walking, putting distance between myself and the penthouse, between myself and Clark, between myself and the fool I had been for believing that someone like me could find something real with someone like him. 2 weeks passed in a blur of silence and regret. Clark never called, never texted, never showed up at my apartment, or tried to force me into any conversation. I had expected pressure, maybe even manipulation. But there was nothing. Part of me wondered if he had moved on, maybe chosen Sienna after all, settled for someone who fit his world better than I ever could. But every single day, I found something waiting at my door. A note, handwritten in messy, unpracticed script that was nothing like the polished CEO signature I had seen on business documents. These notes were human, imperfect, raw. The first one said, "I miss your honesty." Then, "I'm sorry for hurting you," followed by, "The selection has been canceled. No PR strategy, just the truth. And please come back. Not for any selection, just for me." I kept every single one, reading them over and over during sleepless nights. Meanwhile, my life was falling apart in other ways. The notoriety from the selection had made getting a real job nearly impossible. Potential employers would Google my name and find articles about the scandal. They assumed I was seeking publicity, that I wasn't serious about work. My rent climbed further into arrears, and I was running out of options fast. But worse than the financial stress was the emptiness. I missed him. I missed his voice, his presence. Those rare, genuine moments when his CEO mask had slipped and I had seen the real person underneath. I missed feeling less alone. One evening, curiosity got the better of me. I searched for news about Clark and discovered he had indeed canceled the selection publicly. There was footage of a press conference where he sat before a room full of reporters and stated clearly, "This is a matter of personal feelings, not business strategy. I will not force anyone into a relationship they don't want." He had respectfully declined Sienna's continued interest, thanking her for her time but making it clear there would be no winner announced. The company's stock had initially dropped at the news, but then something unexpected happened. It recovered and even climbed slightly. Business analysts praised his honesty, his willingness to prioritize personal integrity over public perception. He had told the truth. He had kept his promise even though I hadn't been there to see it. Rain was falling the night I made my decision. I sat in my tiny apartments, surrounded by his handwritten notes, and realized I missed him just as much as he apparently missed me. We had shared something real, even if it had started in the worst possible way. Maybe that connection was worth fighting for. I didn't call ahead. I just went, getting soaked in the downpour as I walked to his building. The security guard recognized me immediately and simply nodded toward the elevator, as if he had standing orders to let me through whenever I appeared. The penthouse was quiet when I arrived. Clark was in the living room, and the sight of him made my heart ache. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't been sleeping properly. A laptop sat open in front of him, but he was just staring blankly at the screen, not really seeing it. When he noticed me standing there, dripping rainwater onto his expensive carpet, he stood up so quickly he nearly knocked over his chair. "Miller, I'm still angry," I said before he could continue, water pooling at my feet. "But I understand that maybe you were telling the truth, that you actually care. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't have done all this, canceling the selection, admitting your mistakes publicly, risking your company's reputation." Clark didn't say anything. He just crossed the distance between us and pulled me into a tight embrace. So tight it almost hurt, like he was afraid I might disappear if he loosened his grip even slightly. I was soaking wet, but he didn't seem to care. "I never wanted to hurt you," he whispered against my hair. "If you give me another chance, I swear I'll never make you regret it. No more lies, no more games, just us." I grabbed onto his shirt and pressed my face against his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing beneath my cheek. It was pounding just as hard as mine. Scared, hoping, completely vulnerable. "I have one condition," I said into the fabric of his shirt. "If we're going to do this, it has to be completely real. You need to involve me in your life properly, as an partner. I won't be just some trophy or accessory." "Absolutely," Clark responded immediately. "You'll be my partner in everything. Life decisions, business discussions, all of it. I want your perspective, your honesty, your presence in every part of my world." He disappeared briefly and returned with a towel, then began carefully drying my hair with such gentleness, it made my throat tight. Afterward, we sat together and talked for hours. I shared my fears about losing my identity, about being swallowed up by his wealthy world. He shared his promises, his vision for how we could build something together that honored both of us. "So, Mr. Hayes," he finally said, taking my hand in both of his, "will you give me a real chance? Not as a CEO making a business proposition, not as some rich alpha offering a deal, just as Clark asking if you'll let me prove I can be worthy of you." I laughed for the first time in 2 weeks. "Yes, but only because you finally asked the right question. And because I missed you too, more than I wanted to admit." Clark kissed me then, soft and careful and entirely real. When we finally separated, he kept holding my hand, like he needed the physical connection to believe this was actually happening. "There's something else," he said. "I want to offer you a position at the architecture firm I've been acquiring. You'll work there on your own merit, earn your place honestly. Not because you're with me, but because you deserve the chance to pursue the dreams you gave up." I stared at him in shock. "You're serious? You would actually—" "Your dreams matter, Miller. They should have always mattered. I want to give you back what you had to sacrifice." In that moment I understood this was real. Not perfect, not simple, but genuine. I had come to this city for a job interview and somehow ended up with so much more: a partner who saw me, a chance to reclaim my lost dreams, and the beginning of something that felt like it might actually be love. It wasn't destiny or fate. It was choice. His choice to change, my choice to forgive. Our choice to build something real together despite the messy, complicated way we had met. "Thank you," I whispered, "for seeing me, for choosing me." "Thank you for coming back," Clark responded, "for giving us a real chance." Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the city clean. Inside, we held each other and started planning a future neither of us had expected but both of us wanted.